So, I'm making this video from my car, obviously. I didn't know if I was going to be able to make this video this week, but I made a commitment to post a video every week, and I am really wanting to honor that commitment. But I'm going to be really honest and say that I am having a very tough time right now. And it's part of my nature to assess things, and it's part of my job as a life coach to create or derive lessons from experiences and to sort of package them and present them and give them out as tools and support people in dismantling the stuff that happens in life and learning how to break it down into these usable components that are opportunities or places to dive into the self or whatever it might be. But I'm having a tough time with that in my own life right now. So I guess that's where the conversation is for this week, for this one, right? What if sometimes you can't package everything as some pretty little lesson? Or what if sometimes things just happen and it doesn't make any sense and we don't know what to do with it and it's just painful? I'm making this video from my car because I was aware that I might talk about a tragedy that happened in our local region recently that has affected my life to some degree, but my son's life to a bigger degree. And I didn't want him to hear it. He's playing video games inside. He's safe. But it's more than just tragedy. What happened was senseless and horrible and awful and destroys my heart and makes me scared and brings up a lot of stuff from my past. And tragedy is good for putting under the microscope the reality that things happen that are horrible and we can't do anything about them. And when tragedy happens, we have to just sink into acceptance and sort of mitigating our feelings of being unable to control something. And we know that that's part of dealing with tragedy or death or extreme things like that. We know there's a point at which it's we don't have control. Whew. But there are other places in our lives where things happen to us. And we don't have control there either. And we don't know why they happen. And those things are tragedies in a personal way, on a very real level as well. Henry came by, so bought me a second to... Things happen in our lives that we don't get a say over, and it happens all the time. And a thing that many people do is we falsify our control, and we're oh, well, I can see this as a positive, or I can see the blessings, or I can find a way that I can give it control. I can reclaim my control. Or we do this thing where we find a way to make these things like okay. And I'm bringing this up for two reasons. One, I want to give you guys permission, because I have needed permission for this many times in my life. I want to give you permission for things to just not be okay sometimes. It's okay not to be okay. There's a song with those lyrics. I've had a lot of crazy things happen to me. We all have. Some of that shit is not okay, but we make ourselves be okay with it. Or we make ourselves find a way to make it fine. And like, that's okay. That's a coping strategy. There's a big push for like positivity only mentalities, kind of to find the lesson in whatever, like go introspective and see what you're doing to make your situation worse for yourself. And yeah, that's okay. Like, sure. But also, there's something to be said for like radical acceptance of what's happening in your life or what has happened to you, and how those things aren't okay, and maybe you have zero control over them. Because I think, quite honestly, that is a part of growth, and that is a secret to life. You know, if there's a salmon swimming in a river and that salmon gets scooped out of the river by a bear, no one is trying to talk to the salmon about, like, what could it have done differently? Or, like, how can it turn this into a life? Like, that's just the worst day for that salmon. That just happens. There's not, like, something else. Sometimes things just happen, right? And even if we can understand nuances and we can like psychologically analyze, or we can go into like, oh, what does this mean? Or what's this purpose? Or what's whatever. And we can try to figure it out with our minds. Our hearts still often are just like, please just acknowledge that this feels horrible. And sometimes we give ourselves permission to do that when it's about death or about, you know, tragedy like a fire, or when it's about illness or disease. But sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to feel that when, you know, we lose our job, or we sustain an injury, or we go through a breakup, or we lose a friendship, or our pet runs away, or whatever it might be. What about the smaller things that happen that feel very not okay? And I don't talk about this so that you get stuck in not okay. I actually talk about it for the opposite reason. Because so often we're just like not allowing ourselves to just live in reality, and to let reality be like, it's okay not to be okay right now. That we don't actually ever process our feelings authentically. When we're not authentically processing our feelings, we're walking around with those feelings trapped inside our body in the background of everything we're doing. And they make us afraid, and they make us have anxiety, and they make us have stress, and they make us have sickness, and they make us have all these physical symptoms and emotional symptoms and mental symptoms because we're just not feeling our feelings. And that is what grief is, and that is what grief demands us to do, and that is what loss is, and that is what loss demands us to do. It demands us to say, we had something and now it's gone, and that's sad, and you need to feel sad about it. You had something and now it's gone, and you have no control over that, and you have to get real okay with having no control. And I gotta tell you, I suck at that. So if you also suck at that, you're not alone. But part of life seems to be things happening that we just have to sit with and endure, even though we don't want to, and we want to like stomp our feet and not have that be part of the process, and we just want to make it stop. And like that makes sense to me. And yet we have to acknowledge that we don't get that power. We don't get to make it stop. We're not in charge of that. And these things just happen. And all you can do is reach out for help, ask for support, you might get ignored from the people who you reach out to. And that might hurt so much. But all you can do is keep trying to get support for yourself, or to give support to yourself, or to just sit with yourself in your honest, true feelings, and to not make yourself feel bad or wrong about how you feel, but to just be with yourself. We all need to just be with ourselves sometimes, and to allow whatever is happening to happen, and to let ourselves know this isn't okay, this is terrible, but it will be okay because I'm going to let myself feel my feelings. I'm going to let myself learn how to come to terms with things happening that I'm not in control of. And I'm going to learn, how do I cope when I have no control? Which is a very different question than how do I falsify control or give myself some sense of control over a situation that I actually can't control at all. How do I just sink into being present with whatever's actually happening? How do I show up for myself there? That seems to be my lesson this year. And I don't have it packaged up all pretty for you yet. No way. But it keeps on coming. So hopefully I'll get it. And then I'll be able to figure it out, right? But for right now, all I've got is holy shit, this is hard and it's painful. And I'm just going to sit with myself when it feels like that. And I'm going to try to be as least destructive as possible to myself during those moments. And if I am destructive to myself, I'm going to learn to forgive myself. And I'm going to try to reach out and do the best I can. I'm going to try to say, what kind of person am I? How do I want to handle these things? And I'm going to try to do those things. And if they don't land or if it doesn't work, I'm just going to sit with myself in those moments too. And I'm just going to try to give myself the love that I need, the healing that I need. And when I can't, I'm going to ask others to help me. And I'm going to breathe through it, and I'm going to know that sometimes things in life are just not okay. But because life is all duality, and because life is all about two sides of the same coin, I know that just as not okay as things can be sometimes, well, guess what? They can be that beautiful other times too. And if I'm not present with myself when they hurt, I won't get to be present with myself when they're wonderful. So let's just learn to be present with ourselves. And that's the best, I think, that we can do. So that's what I've got this week. And I don't know if it's helpful. I don't even know what it's about. I mean, I know what it's about for me. But that's it. Love yourself enough to be authentic and honest with yourself, to sit with yourself through the pain, and to let it be okay not to be okay. Love yourself enough to remind yourself that if you feel your feelings now, you get to feel your feelings later too. And that none of this is permanent. I hope you have a good week.